Hey everyone, welcome to the Rebelcast. This is episode number 42, really part two of our short series on Bloomburrow. Previews, I guess you could call this set preview if you want to. We have an action-packed episode. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today, so I really want to jump right into it. But I love the title. Thank you, Athena. We're gonna call this the Bloomburrow Starter Kit. Oh man, speaking of, how are you, Athena?
I am doing really well, actually. I say that, but I'm pretty close to punching a wall.
Oh
I've been
yeah.
doing this standard metagame challenge. Uh, I got my second try. I got a 7-0 on Blue White Control, and I'm like, oh, cool. Let me try to do that with some other decks in the meta. And I've had so many 6-1s with Orzhov mid range that I just want to smack someone. 'Cause I keep hitting domain in the last game. But anyways, it's neither here nor there. I am here to talk about Bloomburrow and give everyone here a nice introduction to this wonderful critter-filled set.
Hell
How are you
yes.
doing today, Max?
I'm doing okay. I'm also excited for Bloomburrow. I think the theme. I watched some of the story chapters narrated by the official Wizards channel, and
Mhm.
I got into the story a little bit. It reminded me of some books I read as a kid. ICPJ's had that experience as well. We were both listening and tuning in. I like the story. As a set, I'm also very excited for what we can brew up. What is coming. I had an exciting stream, but like I was telling you earlier, like I've been doing the same old. Playing Boros Convoke, and the Gruul ramp deck I play sometimes is also very exciting. I think it's got some pieces coming as well, but oh man, I'm ready for something new. That is for sure.
Me too. Me too. Get Wandering Emperor out of here. I want to play something different.
That was a very common comment we got this past week
It
across our
was,
videos.
yeah. No one
Yeah.
likes the hag.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. But
Oh
yeah,
goodness.
go ahead and let us know what do we have packed on the docket today.
All right. So, to start off, we're going to be talking about some of the themes of the set. So, obviously, it's going to start with kind of limited esque feel to it because we're going to be talking about the different limited archetypes. And then we're going to talk about constructed after that, which is going to be most what like the very large majority of this video is going to be. We're going to give you a brief rundown of what the constructed set will look like, how it'll affect standard and other formats going forward. We've got a list of our top 10 favorite cards from this set. I think we both actually have a single card, like the same card on our list, but everything else is different. So you're going to get 19 cool cards to look at. Then we each have 3 Bloomburrow ready standard decks for you, and we're going to kind of go over those, give our thoughts on those, and how we expect them to interact with the meta going forward. Then we're going to have a very brief section talking about Duskmourn and other sets further beyond, potentially, on some of our favorite archetypes and where we expect to see them. And that should be it.
Hell yeah, hell yeah! I can't wait to get to the favorite cards and talk about those because I was surprised just looking around at how many cards. I didn't think I was gonna like that many cards. I didn't think I was gonna fill up a list of 10, but I
I
did.
couldn't pick 10. I had such a hard time picking 10. I had like my initial list had like 23. I was
Oh
like,
my
oh
god.
God, I have to put this down to 10.
Oh my god. Oh. But let's get the homework part of this out of the way because right, we
Mm,
to be a well-rounded competitive MTG player, you got to be able to draft, you got to be able to do sealed, you got to be able to do limited. So, now while it is not exactly my forte doing limited, I'm still a novice. I'm still a young Padawan when it comes to limited, but I'm learning. I'm picking up on some things and it's important to know what's coming ahead when it comes to the set. So, for that reason, I've pulled up the information from Mark Rosewater's most recent article, and I just want to give some highlights, just talk about what each dual color archetype of the 10 do and what they represent. So it's no secret, this is a very kindred friendly set, right? The archetypes are based around the different kindreds and the different creature types. So one mechanic before we talk about the 10 archetypes, duos. These are cards that come in all 5 colors, and they consist of 2 of the different kindreds from the set. The reasoning here, the design philosophy here was, according to Rosewater, that for limited wanted to have a lot of like common cards that are super draftable. A little bit more, they're gonna like rank a little bit higher than your typical common. I think because one, to really diversify. Some of the complaints in past limited sets is that the commons were too weak. There were just a few cards that you picked up and that was it pretty much, and you locked people out of the good decks. Hoping to diversify. We'll see how successful they are come this Bloomburrow release. But let's go over the 10 archetypes. Birds, white, blue. Uh, the thing about birds, I just want to make a brief comment on each of these, but the thing about birds, when I first heard about this, I thought, oh, great, we're going back to the flight decks. ICPJ's had white, blue birds deck a long time ago, and in a long time ago rotation standard that she loved to play. And so I was excited, maybe this archetype is coming back, but there's quite a few bird mechanics that require you to also have creatures on the ground. So I'm not sure how selectable this one is going to be in limited. We've also got Dimir as rats, blue-black rats. This is, I think, one of the archetypes that has a mill mechanic to it. Filling up your graveyard is key. Obviously, you're going to have access to some removal, possibly some counters. And rats take up what this archetype sort of covers. It does branch off a little bit into Golgari. You could almost build like a Sultai deck if you wanted to that plays with the graveyard quite a bit. Lizards are Rakdos, and this one's pretty simple to figure out. It's about paying you for damage and then payoffs for doing that damage. One of the big signpost cards, one of the big legendaries is Cruel Claw, and I think we'll have a chance to talk about that in the future. But let me go down to raccoons. Raccoons are gruel colored, and I've noticed the expend mechanic is a major sort of mechanic here where you spend a certain amount of mana and then you get a payoff for that. And the raccoons help you do that by either being mana dorks themselves or untapping or providing some kind of mana when they do something. And then the majority of them also have expend rewards for doing that. So I'm not sure how much this synergizes with, it's going to synergize with standard, but as a limited archetype, it seems like people are already saying, some creators are already saying this one's going to be pretty strong. Rabbits are white-green. You think about multiplying like rabbits, and tokens come to mind. Obviously, Selesnya is always strong in like token-type archetypes, and that's the case here. And then I think, of course, you have some really strong rabbit creatures that do other things as well. But all about building up a board state. Bats, white-black. A lot about gaining life gain, but also like if you pay life to do things, there's payoffs for that as well. The signpost bats, I'm pretty excited about them, but there hasn't been a whole lot of excitement around this archetype. Hopefully, one of my brews later on in the episode will excite you about playing bats. Otters are blue-red, and there's a little bit of a prowess, play a lot of spells kind of archetype going on here, as you would expect from that archetype. Squirrels are Golgari, and to go along with the graveyard play, squirrels oftentimes you can forage to pay the cost of things, which essentially means you exile 3 cards from your graveyard. So there's a payoff there for filling up your graveyard. You get these extra capabilities with foraging. Mice are the Boros animal, and they come in wanting to go wide, but also having quite a few anthem effects. I know the 1-drop in red, the Heartfire, is one that I've actually listed as a favorite card, so we'll talk about why that is. But some of these cards synergize a little bit with the Boros decks in Standard. I'm not sure if it's going to synergize with Boros Convoke, but as a limited archetype, this one's also listed as being like one of the top 3 that you want to go for already. And then frogs are blue-green, Simic. I'm not exactly sure what... I've looked at the frogs. I'm not exactly sure how they synergize, but... there's some
love
bounce.
The frogs. May I?
Go ahead. I know there's some bounce effects. What else is going on?
Yeah. Which I just want to talk about how beautiful it is that they make the frogs bounce. That's my favorite thing ever. But in terms of the frogs of this set, a lot of them are focusing on ETB value and leaves the battlefield value. So you'll get some things like Dowerport Mages, like whenever something leaves the battlefield, you draw a card. You'll have like a Spirited Companion frog. A lot of things that just care about getting you value over and over and over. Some of the frogs even do things to your own creatures that you will then want to get rid of and blink to get rid of those negative effects.
Okay.
So that's a big thing with the frog mechanic.
Okay. Would you say that's your favorite archetype of these?
It's between frogs and birds for me.
Okay. All right. You want to talk to us about that? Why are you excited about birds?
Oh, I just really like the idea. So I'm not much of a limited player,
Okay.
honestly.
Okay.
But the birds have some of my favorite constructed cards, and then
Mhm.
also I just think it's adorable that part of the birds mechanic is that they're teaching other animals how to fly, even if it's just temporarily. That is a big
Okay.
theme at the art in this set, and that is
Okay.
adorable to me.
And maybe I'm overlooking the fact that you might be able to do that to some big creatures, and that could be a good payoff for that as well.
Mm.
But okay, all right. Maybe we should give birds a chance. I think that when it comes to what I want to go for first, it's either going to be it's between lizards and raccoons. Lizards because I think like the burn mechanic, or being able to ping your opponent and get a lot of little effects in for it. I think that excites me. But the raccoons, being able to ramp up and get a payoff for that, even if you're not ramping into big cards. I don't know. We'll talk about some raccoon themed cards later because I think I have some to talk about in the Gruul Prowess. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about those two. Is there
All right.
a least favorite that you have before we go to the next section?
I'm least excited by probably rabbits. I mean, I don't know. I've just seen Selesnya tokens too many times, even though I love Selesnya. I just when your signpost uncommon is Bunnycorn with Trample, I just like I don't know. I can't like. There's already you already made this card.
I think I'm least excited about
No.
otters just because there's already kind of a prowess theme in standard. I don't know if this is going to split that color set and really
Mm.
spread it too thin. I don't know. I don't know. I'm least excited about otters.
Next up, we're gonna go into like a little bit of the constructed set overview here. First thing I want to talk about is the kind of overall design of this set being focused on these like two color pairs that are creature types. Um, One thing that they did was they made these very, very powerful monocolored spells. They're all 2 mana, like color, instance. I think they're no, one of them is a creature, but they made these really powerful cards for 4 of the colors. Um, but the rare land of this set is Fabled Passage. For those that don't know, Fabled Passage is like a really, really good Evolving Wilds effect. Um, and what we'll want to do with it is run more basics naturally. So that'll mean that these two color decks are going to have a lot harder of a time playing these monocolored, really powerful cards. So it really incentivizes you into monocolor for those
Hmm.
specific cards. And the other thing with that is because we're going to be playing Fabled Passage and because we're going to be playing more basics, they were able to print a card like Sunspine Links, um, which is I think, is going to be a major player in this standard. Um, it is a card to punish greedy mana bases, and I think it's
Yes.
really good that they did that during the set where most people aren't going to be running as greedy of a mana base. So that's like a nice little design thing that they did there that I really, really enjoy. But moving forward from that, we've got these on another monocolored theme here. We've got these valley creatures like Valley Quest Caller, Flood Caller, etc. There's one for each color, and they
Hmm.
kind of blend all 5 of the creature types of that color together into one theme. So, like the green one grows itself, the white one is an anthem, the red one is like a Torbrand effect, the blue one is like a Jeskai Ascendancy, etc.
Okay.
I can't remember what the black one is, but these are things to look forward to or to look towards going forward into this rotation, because these are very powerful cards that can really cement your monocolored archetypes. So between those really powerful 2 mana cards and these Valley Lords, definitely watch out for those if you want to be playing monocolored this standard rotation.
Cool.
They're
Cool.
all they're all really strong. I don't think there's a single one of these that I wouldn't wanna play in, some kinda build around for. I tried really hard to make some of them work, but we may not have the tools for them right now. That doesn't mean we won't later down the line, so just keep an eye out for all those creature types that you'll see in Bloomburrow going forward.
Cool. Cool.
Um,
Cool.
that said, don't build kindred decks. Uh, don't do it. I think it's a big trap to build kindred decks this time around. There's no lords really for these cards. There are for like mice, I think, and that's about it. Um, a lot of them are synergistic though. So instead of playing black green squirrels, you're gonna play a black green graveyard deck that has a lot of the squirrel cards in it. Because a lot of these mechanics all go back into other mechanics of recent sets. So if we look at squirrels, has a lot to do with food and graveyards. This works well with Descend from LCI. It works well with the food mechanic from Wilds of Eldraine. The the prowess cards from otters are going to be something you want to look for when combining them with things like Balmor or Slickshot, Show Off, etc. Um, the rabbit cards are all going really wide. You can look for your other token themes in previous sets. These are where you really want to look if you want to brew around these Bloomburrow cards instead of just like plain old, oh, I'm playing blue white birds, or oh, I'm playing red black lizards. So definitely keep an eye out on that.
Definitely, definitely.
Mm.
I wanted to also just bring up something that I dreaded happening. We were looking to see what lands were going to be in this set, and when I saw Fabled Passage, my heart sank because one of the decks that I run up against a lot in ladder, but don't pilot too often myself, is Teamer Ramp, and it looks like this deck might have a little bit of longevity as might Domain, with Fabled Passage coming in and giving the Evolving Wilds sort of effect for those of you who played with that card more often. But yeah, Fabled Passage was a staple in Standard a long time ago, back when Sultai decks, 3-color decks, Grixis, all those were in play back during the Ikoria and subsequent Strixhaven Standard. So, oh man, I don't know. I'm kind of dreading what the ladder's going to look like, but we'll see. With the Graveyard play coming into the set, I think maybe Graveyard Hate will go into sideboards and sort of keep a balance and a
Mhm.
check on that. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. There is one card I'm going to bring up later that sort of does aid that effort. So we'll get to that pretty soon.
Mm. I also want to point out, Max, that you might be extra disappointed. It's not gonna. I'm telling you right now, it's not gonna be Teamer Analyst. It's gonna be Jund.
Uh,
100% certain it's
yeah.
gonna be Jund, and I'm gonna talk about why later in the video.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
The last thing I wanted to mention for this is that I'm expecting, and I think you should too, a much faster meta than before. Two key reasons. One, the only color with good low mana sweepers now is white. Red has Brotherhood's End, but you can't hit a Warden with a couple counters on it. You can't hit anything that grows any, too big with any sort of counters. So red's not going to have a good time with that. Black is losing Path of Peril and isn't really having the best ways of dealing with creatures after that. White still has Lockdown and Orzhov has Pest Control.
Yep.
So outside of those colors, though, a lot of these like go wide creature decks are going to start wreaking havoc. So definitely watch out for those. And the other reason is because we're losing slow lands. And this has a bigger impact than you might think, right? When we're going around brewing control or ramp or combo decks, where we're going to want things like a deserted beach or a sundown pass and they're not available, now we're looking at a lot of our lands coming in tapped after turn 4. So definitely keep an eye out for that because our strongest 2-color lands right now are going to be your fast lands and your pain lands. It really incentivizes a faster meta.
Okay.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah. Oh man, deck building's gonna be so different day one. It was already tough for me to be able to cut out just in the land piles, the stuff that was rotating out when we were brewing
Oh
for
yeah.
this. So,
It'll be
oh
it'll be
man.
fun. It'll be fun. We have a lot to look forward to in Bloomburrow.
Yes, we do.
Um, and to lead into that, each of us have our top 10 favorite cards of the set. I don't know how you have it in yours, Max. Mine are in no particular order. Um, in this, I put them in color order personally. Um, but I'm gonna let you start
Okay.
with your 10, and
All
then I'll
right.
go to my 10. So you go ahead, you get the stage.
All right. Let's do that. The first one I'm going to talk about. No order here as well. It almost color order. I think I was doing this as I was brewing, so there may be an order, but it's unintentional. Warren Warleader is a mythic 4 mana value, including 2 white in the cost. 4/4 Rabbit Knight. It has Offspring 2, and whenever you attack, you get to choose one, create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token that's tapped and attacking, or attacking creatures you control get +1/+1. I think this card fits into those go wide strategies that are already in standard, right? And this is one of those 4 drops. I experiment with going up the curve with Boros Convoke. This might be something that I bring into a deck like that, or whatever version of that deck survives. Number 2 on my list, again, no particular order, is one that I built with for this video. It's Zoraline, the Cosmos Caller. This is a signpost. Build the Bats deck. I don't know that many people are going to actually build the Bats deck. I'm gonna try with the one that I brewed up. But I am excited for this ability here where, synergizing with Deep Cavern Bat, which is already a standard staple right now, just being able to, whenever it enters or attacks, you get to pay the 2 life, and there's payoffs with bats for losing life. Returning non-land permanent mana value 3 or less from the graveyard. You could do that with the Hopeless Nightmare, I think is the card. You could do that with potentially, a whole wide set of permanents. So I don't know.
Oh, I didn't realize it was non-land permanent. I thought it was creature. Oh, okay. That card actually is a lot better than I thought it was. Now that I look at that again. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those Orzhov Pixie decks are gonna love this, I think.
Yes, I was just gonna say, if you're not like me and you're crazy and building the Bat deck, you're building the Orzhov Pixie deck. So we'll see if that fits into that deck. The third card I want to bring up is Dawn's Truce. I had to do a double take when I read this, but this card basically allows you to protect your go wide strategy, and very effectively. I know gifting a card is a controversial, that's usually something you don't want to do as a cost historically in Magic. People say that's terrible. Don't give your opponent a card. But I think in certain situations, if you're playing aggro, for example, you're going to want that to happen. So giving everything indestructible, giving everything hexproof, I think that's awesome in a 2-cost white card. So I'm going to see this in sideboards. I think we're going to see this in some sideboards for sure. One I also want to bring up, and I built around. I tried to build around this one, but eventually I decided, you know what, this kind of just fits in a deck where you do want access to more cards in an emergency situation. And what better deck than Gruul Prowess? But Byway Barterer, the 3-cost raccoon with Menace, that when you expend 4, you can discard your hand and draw 2. And it's a 3/3 body, which I know all bodies are removable. People say you can just kill it. But I think we're getting into a standard where creature decks are very viable and becoming increasingly viable. So I'm giving creatures a chance, and I'm giving Byway Barterer a chance. There's also a new talent card type. It's not really new. It's like classes, if you remember the D&D adjacent sets. But Innkeeper's Talent, I think, obviously it's a spell at 2. It's a fight spell. Or no, yeah, it's a you add the 1/1 counter, and there's decks that synergize with that. I think Mono Green synergizes with adding 1/1 counters right now. Selesnya certainly will. Giving everything Ward 1 at level 2, but level 3 is really what I'm looking at, and I think just oh man, I'm thinking the days when Ozolith was a huge thing, but I think we have a version of Ozolith in green now where you can really just rack up the 1/1 counters, and I'm going to be looking to build with this one. So I suspect that's going to be, if Mono Green survives and actually becomes a viable deck, it might just turn into it's either going to go ramp or it's either going to go straight aggro low curve with something like this at the core.
Yeah,
So
I think the fact that the first 2 chapters are as strong as they are really make this card. We have never seen Doubling Season really, or is it Doubling Season, or
yeah,
is that the card I'm thinking of? The basically is the chapter 3 on this
yeah,
really be good, but the fact that it has the Luminarch Aspirant into permanents with counters have Ward 1. It's also any kind of counter. So it doesn't have to specifically be a
yeah.
1/1 counter for anyone that, I don't know, is building around. No, shield counters are going away. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but surely we're gonna have different types of counters. I know some of the birds give flying counters, so
Do loyalty counters
we'll
count
have
on
that.
planeswalkers?
Permanents with counter. Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, that does. Yeah,
Hmm,
they do.
that could be
Now, if only we
spicy.
had some good planeswalkers in standard.
As they take away planeswalkers slowly.
uh, yeah.
Uh So the next card I want to talk about is also a very sideboard viable card, but Keen-Eyed Curator, 2-cost green, Raccoon Scout. It's a 3/3 body. And what I want to focus in on is the 1 to exile target card from a graveyard. You could keep spending mana to do this. It's a decent mana sink if you're playing against decks that are doing graveyard play, which I suspect the stock value of the graveyard is going to go up with this set. And then also, if you happen to be able to make it +4/+4 and trample, that's a bonus, I think. So
Oh yeah,
Um,
this is that's the green card I was talking about. You really want to be mono green for this. Also,
yeah,
two mana 3/3 is huge. That is that is huge.
yeah. Don't underestimate 3/3 body at 2. That's that's wild. Like, and then if you give it the 4/4 and trample, oh my gosh, that's awesome. But let me bring up the next one. I am excited for this one as well. Darkstar Augur. Again, it's a bat. You could build the bats deck like I have if you're crazy, or you could put this into mono black, Rakdos. We'll see. Demir probably wants this card, but 2/3 Bat Warlock Offspring 1 flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library, put it into your hand. You lose life equal to its mana value. So, um, mono black aggro, maybe it is a 3 cost card. I know that's a little spicy, but maybe it is a 2/3. It dies to cut down, unfortunately, but maybe.
Can't wait to see people offspring this and then end up just obliterating their own life total. People are gonna, people are gonna put this in the wrong deck, play this on 4, and hit their like Shieldred after this, and take 4 damage from the first thing, and then hit a 3-drop and just take 7 damage in one turn and die. You
Yep.
already know it's coming,
It's why
so
people
get
stop
ready for that.
playing. It's why people stop playing Phyrexian Arena so much. Also
Mhm.
because mono red is a thing, and that card's awful against
Yeah.
burn decks like that. So
If you get into that kind of situation where you can see it's going to happen, please record it and submit it to the Rebellion Discord. We all want to see that. We all
this.
want to see when hubris gets punished.
Oh man. The next card I want to talk about is Caretaker's Talent. We talked a little bit about this in the Discord. Uh, Whenever I want to read the text on this because that's important to the value of the card. The first level, whenever one or more tokens you control enter, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Um, so yeah, that's any kind of token. So, level 2, create a token that's a copy of a target token you control. And then level 3 is the only one that involves creature tokens getting +2/+2. So yeah, you want this in the Selesnya or whatever go wide deck, tokens deck, but maybe there's something to be done about it just targeting any token. I don't know. There could be some spice there. So I decided to put it in the top 10. What do you think?
It kind of reminds me of Three Blind Mice in a way.
Hmm.
It like seems like that kind of deck where I just really want at some point in the standard a way for us to make a token copy of Three Blind Mice that isn't terrible like Tameo. So
Yeah.
um yeah, because alchemy, that's like a top alchemy deck. Is it's like an Orzhov mid range
Hmm.
deck that just copies 3 blind mice over and over. I
Yeah.
just want something like that in standard, please.
Man, people sleeping on alchemy. If you want to play the broken stuff, play alchemy. Oh man. The next card I want to talk about is Flamecase Gecko. I didn't think I was going to pick any of the lizards, honestly, because Rakdos kind of already knows what it wants to do. But, you know, if you are wanting to, I don't know, ramp up a little bit, do a little bit more value. If you want to reanimate, I'm looking at the tap 2, discard a card to draw a card ability on this card. This may not be a bad 2-drop. We're losing Blood Tithe Harvester, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know that Rakdos Reanimator deck wants something in the 2-drop slot. It doesn't always want just a spell or removal. Sometimes it wants a body to keep itself from losing life until you get to the turn where you get to reanimate the big thing. So I don't know. I'm looking at this as a possible Rakdos Reanimator, Martyr Reanimator, whatever you want to do, kind of card. Um, did you have anything to say on this one before we get to the one that we share?
I think like my only thing with this and like a lot of these decks I'd like to mention is if an opponent lost life this turn, add black red. A lot of the lizard stuff is outlaw themed. Like pretty much every lizard is like a warlock, a mercenary, an assassin, etc. And most of them commit crimes or give you payoffs for committing crimes.
That's
So I would
interesting.
not be surprised to see some kind of like lizard outlaw deck coming out of this. And this card, I mean, this card seems like it could be a consideration for sure. Mana cheating is always like kind of one of the most broken things you can do in a card game. So yeah,
Yeah,
look out for this.
yeah. Thank you for validating me on that. I feel like there's something
Uh,
there. Let's talk about the one card we share, and we can both comment on this if you like. And it'll segue into your top 10 pretty well. But let's talk about stocking the pantry. So obviously, I looked at this for, mono green reasons because that's who I am. But I'm sure there's some wider application. One cost green enchantment. Whenever you put one or more 1/1 counters on a creature you control, put a supply counter on it. You can at any point tap 2, remove a supply counter, and draw a card. So for me, this speaks longevity for like a mono green deck that's trying to do that. You don't. The problem with mono green is it runs out. It runs out of gas, especially if you're faced off against a lot of removal. So being able to draw cards is typically green's way. I always said if green can draw as a sub archetype, then we're back in business in mono green.
Mm.
What are your thoughts?
So the reason I really liked this card is because if you look at like what people have been trying to do with this mono green aggro shell forever, it's all counters. The new green 2/1 gives counters. Evolving Adaptive puts counters on itself. What is it? Quirion Quest. What was it? Quirion
Beast
Beast
Caller.
Caller gives counters to itself. There's the one from Murders of Carlisle Manor that makes clue tokens and puts counters on itself.
Yeah,
There's
the
the 3
rookie
mana
vet.
4/4 that that one.
Yeah.
We've got the 3 mana 4/4 with proliferate for your counter stuff. So now you're looking at a mono green aggro deck where it's basically a mono green counter stack. And if you bring this in from the sideboard in your grandier matchups, you could be drawing a ton of cards off of it. I imagine like if you put this in that deck, you're gonna have excess supply counters from this. Also to note, because they are supply counters, they also work with that Innkeeper's talent to give this card Ward 1. So I don't know. I want to try something with this like mono green counters like aggro deck because I think this could be a real deck in standard.
I think so too. I think so too.
Mhm.
We'll get to that later as well. But that wraps up my list. Go ahead, Athena. What have you got for us?
So I guess since I started with green here, I'm gonna go backwards up to white around the color wheel. So my other green card I have here is Valley Might Caller, which is again for this sort of like green counters deck. This is the one Valley card that I think you actually probably can build with right out the gate potentially. Um, it cares about your frogs, rabbits, squirrels, and
Raccoons.
what's the last raccoons? Thank you. Which this set has really good ones of those for aggro decks. And again, this cares about counters because it's just putting counters on itself. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for this like mono green like counters aggro deck. I think there's something here. There's definitely something to be said about how long people have been wanting a mono green deck to be good in standard. I mean, I'm
Yes.
not even, I play so much control, but I love mono green. I really do love mono green aggro.
Nice. I'm happy to hear you say that. You're a person after my own heart now.
Yeah. I play a lot of aggro, honestly. I just like it gets overshadowed by how much I play control, so people hate me because of that.
Yeah. Somebody's got to do
uh, right?
it.
Someone's got to do it.
Hmm.
So, moving back around, I've got, let's see here. Oh, I guess I did kind of change the order on this, so it's not in color order. So that was number 9 on my list, actually. So now number 8 on my list, since I do have this in order, is going to be Husk Burster Swarm. The reason I really like this card is for anyone that has played with or against Is It Phoenix in Pioneer. One of the things you always know about is Crackling Drake, which counts your instants and sorceries in your graveyard and in exile. So it's a card you can use to get around Grave Hate. This is kind of the same thing for creatures. Now, it's not going to grow any bigger, but it's going to get really, really cheap. So when you're playing something like the Squirming Emergence stacks that just die to Graveyard Hate, this can be your sideboard card that can save you from those situations because suddenly that Rest in Peace doesn't really matter if you're playing a 1 mana 6/6. So
Mm.
I think this is a really good sideboard card and can really enable those graveyard decks to exist in a world of Rest in Peace. Also to note, unlicensed hearse is going away.
Yep.
So not every color is going to have access to amazing graveyard hate like white and green get. So definitely watch out for graveyard decks going forward.
I agree, and I didn't. This one, I slept on this one. I didn't think about that application. That just like how graveyard hates coming in, you got to have some kind of counter to that counter, right? And I love
Mhm.
that rock paper scissors kind of design mechanic when that happens in standard. I love it. It's fun.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Mhm. So then number 7 on my list is going to be Hugs Grizzly Guardian. I think Max, I'm really surprised this wasn't on your list. As someone who enjoys Gruul Ramp as much as you do,
Yeah.
I'm seeing a potential for an absolutely insane curve. Where if you have a 3 mana ramp spell, you can go turn 2 Beanstalk, turn 3 that ramp spell, turn 4 Hugs, you play X equals 1, it draws you a card, and then Beanstalk draws you a card. And then you can play a 7 drop, like what is it? Vaultborn Tyrant, which again, Beanstalk is gonna trigger, draw you a card, and then Vaultborn's gonna trigger, gain you 3 life, draw you a card. So you're gonna get this absolutely insane like board state and amount of card draw. And one of the biggest weaknesses of ramp decks historically is that once your big ramp payoff is off of the board, that's it. Yeah, nothing else.
Yeah.
So Hugs really helps with that because it helps you rebuild. Even if they kill the Hugs, you still have the extra cards to work with. So I'm a big fan of this deck. I'm very torn on whether to build Gruul or Selesnya ramp post rotation because they both look really good. This one definitely started swaying me closer to Gruul. So yeah, watch out for this card, especially going forward. I'll have a little thing to talk about on that later.
Oh yeah, yeah. You
Mhm.
don't just have smuggler now. You have this giving you that a very similar capability of being able to extend and go even further. Yeah, that is a huge problem. Is as soon as they remove my stuff, my calamity horse, and my dinosaur, we're done. So yeah, yeah. This came very close. This is probably number 11. This came very close to
Oh,
making
okay,
the
okay,
list
fair
for
enough.
sure, for sure.
Number 6, I have another Valley card. It's a Valley Flood Caller. For anyone that knows anything about Jeskai Ascendancy, this is that in standard. There are one of the things that you really want to look out for with this card is any of these creature types that are mana dorks. So right now we have Poison Dart Frog in standard. That's a frog mana dork. So every time you cast a non-creature spell, you can untap your frog. If we can get a second of these in standard, if we can get some kind of bird, frog, um, what are the other blue things? Otter um, or rat.
Rats.
If we can get any of those as a mana dork, this could be something to really look out for a combo deck. Um, I'm really impressed with this card. It works really well with Balmor and Slickshot Show Off. So if you want to build some kind of prowess deck with those 12 creatures, you can go really, really ham with that. So that is also something to look out for with this card.
The is it Slickshot deck is going to be a viable thing, I guess, as soon as Bloomburrow releases. I mean, not that it wasn't before. We saw that variation, but as far as making like the top of the tiers, we might actually see is it Slickshot take over in that
Yeah,
spot.
there's definite potential for this. But this is mostly it's mostly on my list for what is the potential for this card later down the line.
Mhm.
Um, it just takes one more mana dork to really make this go crazy with card draw spells. So next up on my list, number 5 is Salvation Swan. It's funny because a lot of these cards are kind of relating back to older cards that I've played with before. This one is Restoration Angel, kind of.
Yeah,
There's some caveats on it. So instead of blinking a non-angel, it's a non-flying creature, which is definitely weaker, and it's also a 3/3 instead of a 3/4. Um, I think that that won't matter as much as you think it will.
mm,
There's no the next big like red removal spell is 2 damage right now. So outside of lightning strike or them spending like the big like removal spells on it, the ones that hit 5 damage, um, this can survive the 2 damage ones from red, and it can block decently well against 2/1s and stuff. But what you really want this for is synergy, because if you play different birds, then you can start getting that blink effect again and again and again. So you can really start to go crazy with this, and especially if you look at frogs. Birds and frogs work very well together in this set. That is something to look out for going forward.
All right, very cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this one up. I slept on this one as well, but yeah, the Blink deck is definitely going to be a thing. I look forward to seeing you talk about that. Actually,
Mhm. All right. So number 4 is Max's Nightmare, Iridescent Vine Lasher. It's a 1 mana landfall lizard. It's whenever a land ETBs, it pings your opponent for 1. So that analyst stack, that teamer analyst stack is probably gonna go Jund for this, because this is just another payoff to get your Nissa analyst combo with your evolving wilds, your
oh god,
um, what is it, your fabled passages, etc. Because if you have spelunking on the field and you can do your analyst Nissa with this on the field, your opponent could probably just die from the triggers alone. So definitely watch out for this card. It's also very good in those like lizard outlaw decks that I was talking about earlier. Because it's another one of those things that really sets up your crimes. And mentioned the same way that the Tiny Bones enchantment does.
oh god.
So yeah, something to look forward to for that. I know a lot of people on the Discord were really excited about this card and brewing around it.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
Mm,
Rakdos Outlaws, I think is going to be the first one that I try to build.
fair enough.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. All right.
Mhm. Number 3 on this list is Dour Port Mage. Not a lot of people are high on this card. I think this card is pretty sweet. You get to draw a card each time something leaves the battlefield without dying. So this is blink effects, this is return to hand effects, etc. Um, there's a lot of these in standard. The Orzhov Pixie deck was around. There's definitely enough tools in blue to do this with. That Salvation Swan that I talked about earlier triggers this. You have so many of these cards that can trigger this. A lot of the frogs have effects that bounce things or blink them. There's the new 1 mana sorcery that like blinks a frog and you draw a card. There's so much potential with this card and how many cards this can draw you. You can definitely have a deck where this is drawing you 5, 6, 7 cards in a game. So I'm really excited about this. This is one of the decks that I'm going to be showcasing later in this episode.
Nice. Yeah, I
Mm,
won't steal your thunder there. This is definitely. I slept on the Blink stuff. I didn't know about the payoffs, but this definitely alone is a huge reason to go that route. I like that. I like
mm,
that. Okay. All right.
mm. Number 2 is going to be Sunspine Links. Big thing with this card I already talked about is how I really like the design choice. So to include this in the set with Fabled Passage and all those monocolored cards, etc., really gives you a lot to think about with your deck building. That said, I hate Domain. I don't know if anyone knows this. I hate Atraxa. I hate Domain. So I want to make sure that deck never comes back, and this is a really good way to do that. If you ever see someone try to pull off Atraxa shenanigans, throw one of these at them, and they'll die on the spot. This can very easily deal upwards of 8 to 10 damage, and then turn off the Atraxa lifelink or the Archangel of Wrath lifelink. So definitely watch out for this card. People, this is going to be the card you die to the most in this set.
Yeah.
100%. Like, the average person will probably die the most to Sunspine Links this set. I know I will.
Yeah. Yeah. People are gonna
Mhm.
sleep on it at first too, so it's gonna be bad in the first week.
Yep. My number 1 card for Bloomburrow is Beza the Bounding Spring. My current Discord name is Athena the Bunding Spring, because I just love this card so much. This is Sunset Revelry on a stick, but even better. I think this is our next Emperor, guys. I think this is it. This is our next control win condition. Um, if you think of playing a control deck, you are almost always on the back foot in at least one, but usually 2 or 3 of these categories. If you're playing against aggro and this comes down, you're usually making 2 bodies, gaining some life. Against mid range, you're probably doing the same, but sometimes you're also drawing a card. Um, against ramp decks, you're going to get the treasure. Sometimes you'll get the life if they're like pinging you down with something. So I think this is a really strong card. I am main decking this in control decks for a good while. And then that's not even to say like how well this works in white mid-range decks, because I mentioned we need tools for those decks now that Wedding and Emperor are gone. So this is definitely one of those things to look towards as we go forward. I think this is a standout card. Alongside Sunspine Links, I think these are going to be the two cards you remember this set for the most. I would be willing to bet that.
All right. All right. You heard it
Yeah.
here first.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah. We'll hold you
All
to
right.
that because I know later on we'll probably return and see how
Mm.
many of our predictions came true.
If I'm wrong, hold on. If I'm wrong, I will eat both of these treasure tokens right here that I'm going to be playing with this Beza card.
All right.
I will do that on the next on the Rebelcast episode at the end of Bloomburrow. I will eat these treasure tokens on stream.
Oh, yes.
My girlfriend's looking at me really weird.
Oh,
Goodness.
man. That wraps
Mm.
up our top 10 cards going into Bloomburrow. I'm looking forward to playing with any of these and all of these week one. I'm going to rip as many packs as possible to get as many of these as I can. Um,
Mhm.
Let's talk about Bloomburrow ready decks. These are decks that we've either looked at current standard, what's rotating out, and tried to fill those spots, or it might be something that just jumped out at us when we looked at this set. So we each picked 3 decks. We'll start with Athena, going through all 3 of your decks. What do you have for us? I'm so excited about the third one, but go ahead.
Mm. So yeah, because I'm gonna save the best for last. I'm gonna get this one out of the way because a lot of people on the Discord keep asking me about control. I don't know why. I never play this deck ever, but I the first deck I have here is Azorius Control, my update for Bloomburrow. And I'm just gonna make sure I have this pulled up too on my screen so I can talk about the specific
Yeah.
cards in it. But one thing to note is we are losing Emperor, Deluge, and March. Those are the 3 cards we're gonna have to replace. Um, the Emperor, I think, is the easiest replacement out of these because we have Beza. I have Beza the Bounding Spring and I have Horned Lock Whale in those 4 Emperor slots. I think these do a really good job at stabilizing the game at different points. They are very powerful threats that can either gain you life or bounce a thing against an aggro deck. Um, these are good win cons. I was playing Whale before Emperor left standard, so I will definitely be happy to play both of these cards afterwards. And then I'm including more sweepers in this 3 Lockdown, 3 Sunfall, 1 Witnesses because I'm expecting a more aggressive meta. Um, the other stuff that we are replacing in general, I guess I should finish talking about that, is we're getting rid of March. There's no more March. So one thing we're going to be weaker against is going to be artifacts and enchantments. So I have disenchants in the sideboard. I also still have that one Elish Norn in the sideboard in case people decide they want to do those blue-white artifact shenanigans. And then I'm keeping those Tidebinders in the main for similar things like Urabrask's Forge.
Hmm.
And then the big card draw spell to replace Deluge is going to be Spellgyre. This is my choice. I was back and forth on this card. I said like, oh, like is Behold the Multiverse good enough? Is a 4-mana counter spell good enough? I'm expecting more Cavern of Souls this set. That being said, um, I think the next best draw spell after this is probably Silver Scrutiny. I really don't want to
Hmm.
be playing like tapping out sorcery speed to draw a bunch of cards. So this is the next best thing. And the modality is nothing to be laughed at here. And now suddenly we have we have what? 4 of these, 3 steps ahead, 4 No More Lies. That's a lot of counter spells, you know? So if any of these slower decks aren't running Cavern of Souls or they're non-creature decks, right? This is going to be a big problem if we ever get those. So definitely look out for blue white control if we start seeing any kind of combo decks going around.
Right. All right.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. My heart sank just a little bit because now
I
Zorius
know.
Control picked up so many pieces to replace what was
Mhm.
lost. But you know.
Yep. I know you're very excited for our future streamer showdowns where Max is going to try to have fun and I'm going to try to absolutely stomp out that fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Talk to us about Golgari Roots.
All right. So, uh, Golgari Roots is a deck that a lot of people have tried to brew, both in Standard and in Pioneer. I think it's getting a lot of good tools in this set, and I was surprised to see that not a lot of people are talking about this deck. Um, the biggest one, by a pretty large margin, I think, is Bone Cash Overseer, which is a new squirrel. 1 mana, 1/1 squirrel. Tap, pay 1 life, draw a card, activate only if 3 or more cards left your graveyard this turn, or if you've sacked a food. The food part doesn't matter. I don't care about the food. What I care about is I'm foraging. I'm using Thornvault Forager. I'm using Osteomancer Adept. I'm using Feed the Cycle, and I'm foraging. I'm also just doing generic roots things, right?
Mm.
So a lot of these new creatures are also in range of Snarling Gorehound, which is a really big engine for these root stacks. So this is definitely something to look out for. Um, a lot of these yeah, a lot of these scroll cards just look really good in this deck. And then the last thing I want to mention, I guess, for it is the Huskburster Swarm. There's a lot of creatures in this deck. I think there's like 25.
Mhm.
So if your opponent's packing Rest in Peace, which is pretty much the only good graveyard hate against this deck, because most forms will just trigger your roots over and over, then this is something to look out for. Is this Huskburster Swarm here for giving you an alternate win condition?
All right. That deck gets scarier and scarier, and it's about to be. I think it's going to be like at least tier 2 on week 1. People are going to be playing roots. I
We'll
know
see.
that's the popular. It's a popular thing. Maybe high population. We'll see what the win rate is,
Mm.
though. Yeah.
I want to get Rictus's opinion on this list eventually because Rictus loves roots. I don't know if anyone knows this, but Rictus has been all over Pioneer roots. So I really want his opinion on this list and where it is going forward in Standard.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind
Mm.
of curious too. We'll see. We'll ask him.
Yeah.
But all right, talk to us about the one I'm most excited to hear about. Blink. What's up
All
with
right.
Blink?
So I've got Azorius Blink, and a lot of people are like, wait, but the frogs, what happened to all the frog synergies you were talking about? You were so excited for. Look, all the good ones are blue, okay? It's fine. We'll live. So the big card that I mentioned earlier was Dowerport Mage. This was the card that really made me want to brew around this deck. When one or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, draw a card, and it has 2 mana and tap. Return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. So we've got Pixies going with the Spyglass Siren, right? We've got what is it? Salvation Swan is going to be blinking things at instant speed. We've got Long River Lurker. This is another really good frog. This one is Ward 1. Other
Mm.
frogs you control have Ward 1. And when it enters, you get an unblockable creature, and when it deals combat damage, you can blink it. Or you may exile it if you do return it to the battlefield under the owner's control. Yep. So you can blink it. So you're going to get to this point in the game where you're going to be drawing all these cards. You're going to be swinging in with these unblockable creatures, whether they're because of Long River Lurker or they get flying counters on them from Salvation Swan. And you're going to be doing a lot to your opponent. You can use Norn's Inquisitor to make a bunch of more tokens. A neat little tech in here is Aether Channeler, where you can either return something to your hand, draw a card, or make a 1/1 bird, which will trigger your Salvation Swan. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So I
Dang.
am really excited about this because you can make the bird blink itself, give itself the flying counter, and then make another bird blink something else. So there's a lot of synergy to this deck because that's a large amount of card draw at that point. You just drew like 3 cards off of that if you have Swan out. So and you have Dowerport Mage. So definitely something to look out for is these synergies. I don't know if this is going to be the most competitively viable thing ever. I think it's going to struggle closing out games because you're just hitting them with a bunch of 2/2s and 3/3s. But I am going to have so much fun playing this deck. Um, I'm really excited for this. I guess another card I should mention on this is one of those white cards. I kind of made I'm making a little bit of an exception of my normal Frank Karsten rules that I follow with Parting Gust here, just because I think it's so good. White, exile a non-token creature. If you give your opponent a 1/1, then it's just gone forever. If you don't give them a 1/1, whatever that creature is comes back. So it's both a blink spell for your blink shenanigans, and it's a removal spell. So really excited for this one.
I'm excited that you brought up Parting Gust because I had to do a double take when I first read this card.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's both of those modes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
this deck overall looks like Value Town, so I can't wait to
Hmm.
try it out. That's gonna be really cool.
Oh yeah. That's yeah, those are my 3 decks. I'm super excited for this I'm super excited for this rotation for these 2 decks. You'll be seeing me playing a lot of Azorius Blink in the coming months. So I hope everyone is here to enjoy that. But now we're moving on to Max. Max, tell me what decks you have ready for Bloomburrow rotation.
All right, so I took it upon myself to build the bats list, and I went with Orzhov bats. And so let's talk about what's already in the set, right? We already had Ruin Lurker bat at 1, and Lifelink is important here to this archetype. We already had Deep Cavern Bat, which has become a standard staple. Uh, and then we also have Aclazotz in the 5-drop slot. So this deck, it goes all the way up the curve to 5. So I had to balance what I was going to pick, especially in the 2-drop and 3-drop slot, because there's quite a few pieces you could actually use. But the life game potential here, life game decks are pretty good at beginner level piloting. I always recommend life game decks as one of those archetypes because life game tends to do really well against other common decks like mono red, burn, anything like that. Any big aggro, you can sort of literally fly above those decks in a lot of ways. It's also a low curve deck in terms of having a lot of your value engines already in the 3-drop slot. You've also got one I bounced back and forth between including with Starscape Cleric. It's the offspring for the bats. Uh, Whenever you gain life, though, each opponent loses 1 life. So I thought about the vampire synergies back from Zendikar. Those vampire decks did a lot of that with, basically popping out a lot of vampires every time your opponent would, every time you would gain life, your opponent would lose life. That sort of synergy. So I saw that potential here. I had to include a full set of those. But really, the card that I want to focus on in the 2-drop slot, Lunar Convocation, it's an enchantment. It says at the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. So more of that. Then it also says at the beginning of your end step, if you gain life and lost life, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. And then you also get to pay 2 life, tap 2 to draw a card anytime. So that's a card that it's a value engine that essentially enables itself. So I thought, why not include at least 3 copies of this? Definitely going to be looking for enabling the stuff in the 3-drop slot, Zoraline and Darkstar Augur. Those cards in my 3-drop slot really make up the core of the deck. But then one that sort of has been getting overlooked in the discussion of whether there's going to be a bat synergy is Star Charter in the 4-drop slot. This is another value engine. You get to basically look at the top 4 if you gained or lost life this turn at the beginning of your end step. Reveal a creature with power 3 or less, put it in your hand. Rest in the bottom of your library. So that's being able to pull cards from the library that are effective, being able to be a creature-based deck that can be aggressive. Some other cards that I thought about adding and decided to toy with, 1 copy of Sarah Redeemer, because that is going to stick around in standard, but enabling those small creatures to have big power. You get 2 1/1 counters whenever you bring in anything with power 2 or less. And then Starseer Mentor is sort of the top of the curve. Another bat signpost card that can be devastating for the opponent once you get there. It's a flying vigilance 3/5, which is already a good stat line, but it says beginning of your end step, you gained or lost life this turn. Again, payoff for that. Target opponent loses 3 life unless they sack a land, a non-land permanent, sorry, or discard a card, which after a while that's going to stack up. So this is definitely going to be a must remove. And by that point, you've already played quite a few creatures that they've been trying to remove. So you're going to wear out those Golgari opponents that use single target removal, that kind of thing. So that's what I was thinking when I built this deck. Some cards I want to bring up are in the sideboard. You've got the one that I picked out in the top 10, Dawn's Truce. I've got 4 copies of that in here, and I think this just fits really well with the Kindred strategies, with the go wide strategies, the creature based ones. So 4 copies of that. And then also, Duress is remaining in the format. I had to look that up just to be sure, but yes, Duress is remaining in the format. So you're going to want that against your control heavy, board wipe heavy archetypes. So I think a combination of those 2 cards in the sideboard can sort of help against those strategies. The question is going to be whether the life gain is going to be enough to overcome the other aggro archetypes like Boros Convoke and Gruul and Mono Red Prowess. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. One card that I just want to bring up last when I talk about this deck is the 2 copies in the sideboard. This should be a main board card, but I couldn't fit it in at the last minute. So I left it in the sideboard, but it's an option. Nocturnal Hunger, it's a common at 3, and it says you can gift a food, but it says destroy target creature. If the gift wasn't promised, you lose 2 life. So because of that synergy with losing life as well as gaining life, I thought this could enable that on some turns. So maybe there's an interest in having this sort of removal in there. Nonetheless, I think this deck stands a chance week 1. We'll see what happens past that. Nathaniel, did you have anything to say about that? I know your opinion on bats wasn't very high coming in.
No, I think outside of Zoraline, I'm not too big on the new bats coming in. I think if we can get, I know you have 2 Case of the Uneaten Feast in this.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get another Lunarch Veteran type effect at 1 mana,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly we can start running 8 of those again, right? And we can start running was it the new Voice of the Blessed Bat sort of thing, and we can
Yeah.
really start to build like a cleric stack because we also have a cleric's lord in standard. Um, so I would look forward to any kind of clerics being printed in the future for a deck similar to this, because I think that's what's really going to have a better chance, like in longevity, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the format. The other thing I want to mention is a lot of people are confused how you're supposed to be losing life with these bat decks. In the event that you're ahead on board and your opponent isn't able to do anything. One thing I want to point out is pain lands. We
Mm-hmm.
have Caves of Quellos in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want, you could even include something like Thran Portal because you're gaining so much life to be able to trigger your loss of life effects. So definitely something to look out for is ways that you can kind of cheat on this effect with your mana base.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I forgot to mention the Caves of Quellos. That's definitely the Painlands are sticking around, so that's definitely going to help this out. Uh,
Mhm.
let's shift over to the second deck I have for y'all, which we already touched on a little bit here, is Mono Green. So here's the deal. I have a love for mono green, of course, and I have some pet cards in green. They're hard to let go of. I had to look at existing strategies that work though, and of course, one of those strategies is there is a tier 1, tier 2 ish deck, Simic Cookies. It's been around for a minute, so there's something that you can borrow from that. There's already a mono green +1/+1 counter artifact style strategy, so I just decided to basically port over what I could from that strategy, take out what's rotating, and add in the new stuff that worked with that because we were seeing cards that are really helping with that. Evolving Adaptive is staying in the format. If you're going artifacts, Teething Wormlet is also something you can use in the 1-drop slot. And then, of course, we talked about Innkeeper's Talent, how that's going to enable this. So I won't touch on that too much. But Sharp-Eyed Rookie, you touched on that. Sharp-Eyed Rookie is going to be in standard as well. So there's some tough cookie. Sentinel creates artifacts, so you can potentially add 1/1 counters to your Teething Wormlet. And then I decided to keep the 3 copies of Defiler of Vigor because that's also friendly with the 1/1 counter strategy and especially going wide. Um, so these are all cards that I was already using that I already loved in a deck that I called Mean Green Machine. So that's a deck that I was already playing. I think we have the new stuff is going to really enable it to go over the top though. We talked about stocking the pantry, being able to draw. I always said if green can draw, then it's going to get a leg up in what it's trying to do. Stocking the pantry is going to definitely enable it to do that. And like you said, I think it's going to be insane card advantage late in the game if you build the deck correctly. So to sum it up, really, Defiler of Vigor, card advantage with stocking the pantry, low curve creatures in green, always a good mix. Really, you're going to be able to seal the game either one of 2 ways with an early aggro game plan that gets in fast with really hard hitting creatures on the low curve. But then you're also going to be able to break standoffs against mid range decks with cards like Defiler Vigor, which make your board state bigger and bigger each turn. The 1 copy of Nissa in there. Let's talk about really quickly before I shift over to Gruul Prowess. The Keen Eyed Curator in the sideboard, again, this is kind of like the Scavenging Ooze for standard, and this is a card that was badly needed because I think the graveyard play is definitely coming back. Uh, and then one other thing is the 2 copies I have in the sideboard of Scrap Shooter. This 3 cost, 4/4 reach body, which is already good value, but then you have this potential to destroy an artifact or an enchantment as it comes in as well. So I'm playing around with the anti-artifact, anti-enchantment stuff in green. I think artifacts are going to be a thing still. I think we're still going to see that artifacts deck out and about. I don't know that it's getting a boost this set, but I think we're still going to see that from prior standard. Um,
Hmm.
do you have anything to comment on this one?
Yeah, I've got a card I'm really surprised that you don't have in your list because I
Yeah.
definitely had it in my green list, and that's Paw Patch Recruit.
Hmm.
It's a 1 mana 2/1 Offspring Rabbit with Trample. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you put a counter on another creature you control. So whenever your opponent goes to remove something, your other things get stronger. So I think this is definitely something to look out for those threats. It's a 1 mana 2/1. Those are always good in aggro decks. Always where you want to start is to look at the stats of things. So yeah, this is I think a card to look at going forward with this, especially with the offspring ability getting kind of insane later in the game, even as a 3 drop.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely one to consider. It's one that I considered as well. I think I went more with the artifact archetype, sub archetype here. But if you don't want to do that, you could certainly go a different direction. There's also a couple of other green cards as well that I didn't mention, but green. The point is, green has a little bit of a chance here to be a deck again, and I can't wait to try it out. And I think there's like 3 different ways you can build green in this next set. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll see how strong it can get. But a deck that is already doing really well and didn't need a boost, but got one anyway. Gruul Prowess. Now, I don't know if my particular build of Gruul Prowess is going to be the correct one. It is very, I will caveat by saying it is very heavy in the 2-drop slot, which can be sort of an issue for these low curve decks, being a little too clunky there. But I think still you have the potential to trade some of these out for what you prefer. I still think these are some really good cards. I think it's still a slick shot show off deck, so you got to have that in there. And that has to be the core of the deck. But you've also got now Emberheart Challenger in the 2-drop slot, which is a Mouse Warrior that with 2/2 with haste that also has prowess, and Valiant, which is a new ability. Valiant essentially, when you target your creature, you get an effect when you target it with the first spell or ability that you control. And this one allows you to exile a top card of your library and basically play that card. So extending, this is something that this archetype always needs, is the ability to extend beyond the hand and have even access to even more cards in the library. Heartfire Hero is the 1-drop, the new 1-drop Mouse Soldier that has Valiant. That when you target it, you get a 1/1 counter, and then also it has sort of that scamp effect where when it dies, you deal damage equal to its power to each opponent. So I think being able to burn out the opponent is part of what the deck wants to do. And even though this isn't, I don't know if this is better than Kumano, which is what we're losing here, but it is a body. It does, synergize with what you're trying to do in Gruul Prowess. So I think it's worth a look here. One card I do want to focus on that I saw that kind of enabled me or made me want to build this is Overprotect. It is a 2-cost card, so we'll see if that makes the difference if people want to play it. But +3/+3 trample, hexproof, and indestructible on target creature is that's a lot in my opinion. Maybe I'm old school. Maybe the power creep is starting to work its effect, but I think that's a lot. I know it costs 2, but I think you could really blow up your opponent with this card in conjunction with the prowess. So I think that card enables some things. One card I want to talk about, Byway Barter, that I wanted to toy with here in the 3-drop slot, allowing you to, again, when you expend 4, you get to discard your hand, draw 2. It has kind of that Case of the Crimson Pulse sort of effect, and which is also in the sideboard, by the way. So like I said, if this deck can do those things, a lot of damage all at once, have access to a lot of cards, overextend the hand, then I think it can do well, continue to do well. And sideboard wise, we've got 2 cards we've already talked about heavily. Keen-Eyed Curator fits in here, and Sunspine Links, if you want to punish your opponents and punish any sort of also life gain strategies. It's interesting. I thought about that one Magma Giant that's been seeing a lot of play in Pioneer because of Amalia. There's some life
Oh
gain.
yeah.
There's some life gain in Standard, so I don't know. Maybe for that reason, you also want to have Sunspine Links. But that rounds out all of the decks that I have for you guys. Did you want to comment on Gruul Prowess really quick?
I just want to mention that I think both Gruul and Boros versions of this deck are going to be really good. There's some really good white cards. There's like a kind of like white blossoming defense
Ooh.
that just got printed, called Crumb and Get It. Um, but yeah, definitely something to look out for is these prowess stacks as they just keep getting more tools because they only really lost Kumano,
Yeah,
all things considered, and they're just gonna get better as Standard goes through this rotation.
I concur. I concur. And in multiple forms, right? There's is it as well. Yeah. Oof. But let's round things out, our discussion of this set preview with, looking to the future. And I'll start by talking about one of the decks that's near and dear to my heart. Let me talk about Convoke. I've been piloting the hell out of this deck. I've been uh trying my hardest to make it into mythic, high mythic with it, and just stick with it even when it runs into a stint of losses. And I find that I've been able to maintain like a 68 to 70% win rate uh, throughout these past 3 months, and so it's something I don't want to let go of. So if this deck has a future, I want to bring up a card that's already been spoiled in Duskmourn, the Wandering Rescuer. I have it up on the screen now. This is a 5 cost Human Samurai Noble in white. And as I was saying, I think you really have to go up the curve or look at potentials up the curve for Boros to survive. But Flash, Convoke, so another Convoke card other than Knight Errant. Double Strike. The important text here is that other tapped creatures you control. Hexproof. So there's an interest in attacking every turn, being aggressive, and preventing some of that single target removal, some of that removal that the Boros Convoke decks really need to protect themselves against. So this is just one piece. I don't know that this card by itself is going to be enough, but I think it's interesting to see that maybe 2 sets down the line, Boros Convoke might stick around. I look for me to be rebuilding Boros Convoke Wink 1 and testing the hell out of it and seeing if it can survive against the likes of Pest Control, which has become really widespread in the meta because of the fact that Convoke decks are everywhere. Or if the deck is going to have to go Jeskai and Azorius or Azorius colors, as has been suggested. I know Azorius has tools. It has, the Invasion of Segovia, I think, too, which is another Convoke card. It's got that 4 cost pirate that gives everything flying. So there's reasons to branch out. We'll see. But I'm going to stick with Boros at first, and just if I branch out, it'll be because Boros didn't do well in the first couple of weeks. That's me looking to the future, hoping that deck survives. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing to note for Azorius is that we still have all the soldiers. So that Azorius soldiers deck is something to look out for, and something like the Wandering Rescuer goes perfect in that deck.
Yeah.
It's already running Knight Errant. It's already playing some things at flash speed. The hexproof is really good for when you need to be that little bit of trickstery that we all know and love from Azorius soldiers. And then we're also just getting stuff from this set for it, like an Azorius flash deck. We have Plume Creed something Escort, I think,
Mm.
which is like a 2 mana, 2/1 flash flying, give something hexproof on ETB. So we're getting a lot of tools for these like Azorius flash decks, and this Wandering Rescuer makes me really excited to try something like that.
Yeah. Plume Creed Escort, the 2 cost Bird Scout Flash flying when it enters. I gotta stop saying ETBs. I can just say enters now.
True, yeah.
Target creature you control gains hexproof. So yeah, wow. Okay. Yeah, maybe the Soldier's deck is the way to go. I played the hell out of the Soldier's deck before Convoke, so I wouldn't be sad about that. I'd actually look forward to that.
There you go.
Wow.
All right. So for me looking forward, I want to talk about the future of ramp. And so to me, the future of ramp comes in the form of a new card in Duskmourn called Overlord of the Hauntwoods. It's a 5 mana 6/5. When it enters or attacks, create a tapped colorless land token named Everywhere that is every basic land type. Um, so that means for domain, this could very much so be a thing. The important part of this is it has a mechanic called impending, which is for 3 mana. You can cast it instead as an enchantment, and it has time counters on it. And then once the last time counter goes away, much like the suspend mechanic, it goes from being an enchantment to being a creature again. and then it can do the attacking thing. But it will essentially be 3 mana, make a domain land token. This is going to be the best replacement I've found so far for Topiary Stomper in a lot of these green X ramp decks. Personally, I've been going Selesnya lately because we're not going to have the Triomes for domain. But who knows? Maybe just the fact that this makes a domain token is enough for domain. We also have, because of Fabled Passage, we have ways to look for the extra land types that you're missing from domain. So,
Ooh.
unfortunately, the fact that this is a domain token might just rain on my parade of wanting to ramp into Vaultborn Tyrant all day, every day. 'Cause that's the card I've been looking forward to ever since I found out that, ever since I started thinking about rotation, because I just really wanna play that card specifically as
Yeah,
my ramp target instead of
yeah.
Atraxa. I hate Atraxa. I mean, everyone who's, like, seen my content knows I think it's egregious that Atraxa was printed into Standard. I think when you have a card that's one of the best reanimation targets in old formats, it's a terrible card to have in this format.
Yeah, you don't make your feelings secret on that card. I know that for
Oh.
sure, and I concur with you. The fact that it's a problem
Mhm.
in Pioneer in older formats, it's just yeah, that's astounding. A standard
Yeah.
card.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's my pick for future of ramp, and I'm really excited with this with things like hugs. Because if you play this in the 3-drop slot, then suddenly by the time you get up to your Vaultborn, you're one turn away from having an extra 6/5
Oh, that's
that's going to
juicy.
keep ramping you. So you're just going to get these gigantic board states with the ramp decks going into Duskmorn. So look out for that.
Yeah, I honestly want to go 2-color ramp versus 5-color domain. It's
Mm,
just it's easier to pilot. It goes off more consistently. So we'll see if domain sticks around. It might get bumped out by Selesnya, Gruul ramp, other strategies. We'll see.
mm.
We'll see. I'm excited to see that as well. Although I am a domain pilot, I don't like admitting that.
It's okay. You gotta be proud of being the what's the opposite of the people's champ? The
Oh
most hated.
God.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gotta be the
Yeah, you gotta
villain.
be
You gotta
the
play the villain
Yep.
sometimes.
You gotta play the villain sometimes. Look,
Oh
Max, look,
man.
as a control player, I can agree with you there. You have to play the villain sometimes.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
that rounds out our set review. Let us know in the comments what you think, what you're looking forward to, and what you would like to see us brew week one, because we'll do it. We'll put it
Mhm.
to the test, and we'll report our results in the state of the meta if we have to. Brewers Corner is definitely an open space for that. If you haven't joined our Discord, what the hell are you doing? Come join the conversation. Come be a part of a growing MTG competitive community. Submit your
Mhm.
brews, show us how it's done, and ask us any questions you have. We all grow together and get stronger together, and I love that about our community. I really have to shout us out every episode because we are awesome in there. I love you guys so much. You're why we do this. So come check us out. Links in the description. And that's pretty much all the time we have for today.
Well, this episode of the Rebelcast is sponsor free, so if you'd like to contribute to what we do and make sure we stay in the game for as long as possible, consider making a purchase in our merch store or joining the Rebellion.
Oh yeah, and until next time, untap, upkeep,
Resist.
resist.